1. Backstory. When I first met the man who became my husband, we were not well off. He moved across the country to come live with me and had not a penny to his name. He proposed to me without a ring, which I was perfectly okay with. It was incredibly romantic. He popped the question spontaneously and is still one of the happiest days of my life. He promised when he was better off financially, he would buy any ring that I wanted. A while after our engagement, the day came where he surprised me by taking me to a jewelry store. He has saved a $5,000 budget, but a little wiggle room for some credit if needed. He told me to go nuts. It was so fun and romantic. I tried on dozens of rings, diamonds, platinum bands, lesser gemstones, etc. Then I saw a set of steel titanium rings. They were originally designed for the grooms, not the brides. But I had never been a big diamond fan, and I preferred simple flat rings to mount his stones. I ended up falling in love with a super simple black titanium ring with angled grooves. It was gorgeous. It was exactly what I wanted. And best of all, they were cheap, less than $200. Husband liked them too, so much that we got him a matching band. We decided to use them as both the engagement ring and the actual wedding ring. We had to special order them, as the jewelry store didn't stock our sizes on hand. I got a surprise when they arrived to find that husband had requested engraving on the inside of mine. It said, "My precious." I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love that ring to death. I wear it to this day, and it still makes me smile. The story. This took place 7 years after I got married. I worked at a chain sandwich shop where we assembled the sandwiches in front of the customer. My store was next to a yoga studio, CrossFit training, and plastic surgeon's office. So we got our fair share of Karens and holier-than-thou rich people. It wasn't uncommon for somebody to drive up in a $1,000 sports car, toting a Prada bag and sunglasses that cost more than my rent. They almost always came in to order the most picky and complicated subs, then complained about the price. We were quite used to these kinds of people, but this lady took the cake. Enter the entitled Karen and her bratty teenage daughter. They looked the part to a T. They proceeded to order the usual complicated picky subs, asking tons of questions about the nutritional info of every item. To assemble the food, we wear clear plastic food service gloves. Because my ring is flush to my hand and won't rip the gloves, I had approval from the manager to wear it at work. While assembling this woman's sandwich, her teenage daughter notices my ring. "Oh, that's cute. Is that a promise ring?" "No, that's my wedding ring." "Ugh. Are you serious?" says her mother. "Yes, it's both my engagement and wedding ring. It has been for several years." Karen looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You have a cheap husband." I balked at her comment, but tried to remain professional. "That may be your opinion, ma'am, but I happen to like this ring. I picked it out myself." "Then you have terrible taste in jewelry." She then turned to her daughter. "If your father had given me a ring that ugly, I would have left him on the spot. Make sure your future husband gets you a ring that at least has diamonds in it." I was floored. I usually get tons of compliments about my ring. I never expected someone to insult it, let alone straight to my face. I was so flabbergasted I couldn't even continue working on her food. I excused myself and went into the back and told my coworker to finish them up for me. I couldn't even stand to be around them. When I told my manager the whole story, he almost didn't believe me. We had to watch the security footage to prove it had actually happened. Never saw that entitled woman again. Glad she didn't come back. I still shake with rage every time I recount the story. I still have that ring in my hand today, and it's still the most beautiful, wonderful ring I could ever hope for. I love my husband very much. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and that matters far more than any jewelry. 2. I, female, got married young. It was a very small wedding, and most of it was DIY. We had a low budget because we were college kids, and our friends and family members pitched in to make it wonderful. Including everything, our wedding did not cost more than $500. One of the things we cut out were invitations. One of the requirements for getting the venue for free was that we had to have it open to the public. We made a mass invite to everyone online. If you wanted to come, you were welcome. If you didn't want to come, then you were welcome to watch the live stream of the ceremony. We did this as we have many family members from out of state. The invitations are where everything blew up. My mother decided that if she did not receive a handwritten invitation, she would not attend my wedding. I figured that works because if she's going to make a scene and try to make the wedding about her, I didn't want her there. So I figured I was not going to make my mom the only person invited. If she did come, then that was on her. My mother proceeded to call her mom and sister, my grandma and aunt, and tell them her entire side of the family had been disinvited for my wedding. Not true. When my grandmother called to tell me she was hurt she was not invited, I proceeded to tell her that we did not invite anyone. It was open for all who wanted to come, and she was welcome to come. My grandmother said she would not come but would watch the stream, so no one from my mom's side of the family came to the wedding. My sister invited us to brunch to talk about plans. While there, she tried to talk us into writing an invitation for Mom and a few others. I stood my ground. If Mom does not want to come, then that is on her. But I will not feed this behavior and have her make a scene at my wedding by getting her way. My sister then went behind my back and made invitations for my wedding. She forged me and my husband's signatures and gave them to my mom and others. My mom called me to thank me for the invitation and to RSVP. I was livid. However, my wedding was a week away, I had too much to focus on, and this was not going to take time away from me, so I let it go. At the wedding, my mother saw that my husband's side of the family all had jobs, bringing in food and photography, setting up, and she came to my dressing room to yell at me. Why didn't you ask me to help? Do you not appreciate my efforts? I did not ask anyone for help, they volunteered to help, so that we could have a nice day and save money. It's their wedding gift to us. Had you told me you were planning it like this, I would have offered my help. I had no idea you were coming until a few days ago. She then says, well, that is when I finally got my invitation. How was I supposed to know you wanted me here? That invitation is not for me, it's for my sister. And you knew you were welcome because we told you. That is not enough and you know it. This is supposed to be my day to shine. My daughter is getting married. The little girl I brought into the world is a woman today. I come here, and I see you have not included me in anything. You don't have a reserved seat for the mother of the bride, and you haven't told me when I will be giving my speech. We're not doing that. There will be the ceremony, the dinner, the father-daughter dance, and my husband will dance with his mom. And finally, a toast with a prayer. There will be no speeches. Throughout the wedding, my sister and mother took turns going on stage to give speeches about us. My brother-in-law went up as well, as he thought he needed to after watching them do it. The rest of the wedding went great. We had wonderful friends and family made it great. After the wedding, my brother-in-law gave us pictures of the day. I looked through, and I did not see any pictures of my mom or sisters. It's as if they were not there. I asked him why he didn't take any pictures of my side of the family. He said he tried, but every time he pointed the camera at her, she did a weird sad face. He didn't want any pictures to be included of anyone having a bad time, so he didn't take any pictures of her. I knew I married into the right family. My mom did put the fake wedding invite in the family photo album. 3. This happened to me 12 years ago. My husband and I had a whirlwind romance that lasted a year. We knew we wanted to be together after only a week, but dated for a year to be absolutely sure. My family hated him. They thought that we hadn't been together long enough to be married. They didn't like that he worked as a farmhand, and when I introduced him to my extended family, my uncle even offered to bury him in the back 40 for me. Not a very pleasant thing to have happen. So we decided that we would just go to the courthouse and elope. But this wouldn't be an entitled mom story if it stopped there. I began getting pressure from my mom to have an actual wedding. So when my husband and I discussed it, we figured it would be fine as long as it was very small. We didn't have much money, and neither of our families wanted to help out all that much. We settled on having a small ceremony with just the parents and siblings in a nature setting, like a woodland or park. But no, that wouldn't work for my mom. We had to have it in the backyard because it would be easier. Fine, whatever. We pick a date for the wedding. But no, that date wouldn't suit my mom because she wanted to go to a quilt show. So again, fine, whatever. We settled again and again until a date was picked out by her for our wedding. I know I should have put my foot down, but my mother is very manipulative and used my father to get what she wanted every time. My father was a very kind man, and all she had to do was cry at him. He would come to me and say, "Just make your mom happy. It will make her so happy if you just do it." He would always look so exhausted, so I would do it for him, not her, to make his life easier. The wedding is still several months away, and I mentioned that since we're now having a ceremony, maybe we should have a buck and doe as well to raise money for it. For those who don't know, a buck and doe is a public party that people buy tickets for and attend to help the bride and groom raise money for their wedding. They are very fun and have games, music, dancing, and lots of adult beverages. My husband and I figured we would have a small wedding as planned with just the immediate family, and then a big fun party for everyone else. The money raised at the buck and doe would pay for the party. My mom said absolutely not, because you have no friends for that kind of thing, and no one would want to go to your buck and doe. I was so depressed by that, I took it pretty hard, and felt like an utter piece of poop. She went on to say that my extended family would never go, and his family lived several hours away, and would never come to anything so trivial. She just kept beating me down until I finally gave up trying. If you are wondering why I kept including her, I was very naive about weddings. I had no idea what I was doing, and my mother was the only person that I could ask about it. That, and I was hoping that maybe for once she might put me first, instead of herself, and actually do something fun with me. There was so much potential for bonding, but that wasn't to be the case. Continue. I wanted to save money on a cake, so I wanted to bake one myself and have fun with it. Nope. She had already told her alcoholic sister-in-law that she could be in charge of my cake for whatever reason. The cake for the party was pretty decent, to be fair, just a simple vanilla slab cake, nothing fancy. The aunt that made it was super insecure about it, though, and accused me of not liking it. Turns out my mom said I hated it, which I didn't, of course. I wanted to get a nice dress, something I could wear again, like a sundress. She got very excited and said that she knew the perfect place to take me, that now I can tell all my friends that I helped pick out your dress. Oh dear Lord, no. But there was my browbeaten father telling me just to go with her, that I didn't have to buy anything if I didn't want to. Good thing, too. Now, I am not a skinny lady, I am thick as heck in all the right places, and that means finding clothing is a hard thing for me. So, having a wedding dress custom-made for my hourglass body was going to be expensive, so a sundress from a plus-size store is what I was going for. My mother is very skinny and looks like a Sears catalog model, so naturally she took me to a wedding dress shop that only caters to petite women. The lady in the store took one look at me when we entered the store and flat out said, "We don't carry anything in your size." And I don't know who does. I left embarrassed. I would never go to a store like that usually, and my mom thought that it was very funny and laughed at me on the ride back home, saying, "Well, what did you expect? Wedding dresses are for skinny women. So I guess you will either need to lose weight or do something else." Like, what the actual heck? I told her I wanted to get a sundress. I told her to go to a plus-size store to shop with me. Instead, she takes me to a petite store 4 hours away and then refused to go anywhere else. I got a dress from a kiosk in the mall a week later. I just told her it was lavender and she would have to deal with it. I was just done at that point. Depressed and self-loathing took over, and my husband was mad at me for letting it get out of control like that. There was nothing we could do, though. By that point, the wedding was a week away, and we had handed my father the money for the party. Potluck barbecue with surprise pizza and beer. So we decided to throw all the fucks out the window and just ride it out, which worked way better than I had hoped. I didn't want a priest or pastor or shaman or anything else of the sort to tie the knot, just a JP. My dad said he knew a guy and had us covered. Cool. Due the day before the wedding, and we are introduced to a very sketchy-looking pastor that hands us a piece of paper with the ceremony my mom has picked out for us. It had a very odd poem in the middle of it that was strange, to say the least. It had the line, "A woman is like a valley and a man is like a mountain. A valley cannot be a valley without a mountain towering above it, and a mountain cannot be a mountain without a valley spread out beneath it." My husband and I locked eyes and stifled laughter. "Perfect," we said. My mom was elated. Now she could tell her friends that she picked the ceremony as well. The day of the wedding comes and my husband's family shows up in the morning, his parents and 2 brothers. But my mom is nowhere to be seen. Just my dad and my brother roaming around the house. I'm all dressed up in my lavender dress, and the wedding is to be at noon, with the party happening for everyone else the next day. I ask my dad where she is, and he mutters quietly that she went to a quilt show and wouldn't be back until that night. A quilt show. Now, many of you would have said, F it, I'ma go ahead and do it anyway without her. But I guess the night before she had taken the pastor aside and told him it wasn't going to be until the evening, leaving us completely in the dark. So we waited around and laughed about how absurd it all was. 6 p.m. rolls around and the pastor shows up, ready for business. My mom shows up about 20 minutes later, laughing about how we can't start until she has a shower and gets dressed up. I tell her this has all been totally unacceptable, that she knew when it was supposed to be, and that she purposely decided to disrespect not only myself and my husband, but also his family as well. She said that I was being ungrateful. We all stood in silence until she came out, and I looked at her and said, "Are we allowed to start now? Do you need a snack? Did you go to the bathroom first?" I would normally never be rude like that, but I was just done. She looked embarrassed and fake smiled and said it was fine. The man went on with the ceremony, and when he got to his odd poem, just as we predicted, all the brothers lost it. We all laughed hysterically. My mother was pissed and hissed at us all to stop laughing, but we couldn't. It was the best thing. My dad and husband's parents were roaring with laughter. After the wedding was done, she went to sulk in her room. How dare we have fun? The party the next day was a blast. We did everything we could think of to have fun, despite my mother constantly trying to get me to hide away from the party. She was literally trying to get me to clean the house and do dishes while the party was going on, so she could mingle and drink. At one point, I just laughed and said no, shotgunned a tall boy of bush light in front of her with my husband's cousin, and suggested that we all have a big bonfire to send off the night. Mom huffed and took my dad in the house to yell at him about it. My poor dad. My mom resurfaced after a while and sat at the fire. She smiled at me and proceeded to start telling embarrassing stories about my childhood. The kind you don't tell people that you aren't too familiar with. The traumatic kind. My husband and I were quite tipsy by that point and decided that since most of the family was either leaving or going to bed, we would round up the stragglers and see if they wanted to go to the local bar. Everyone was already tired, so my husband and I walked to the bar all done up in our wedding duds, in true rural small-town class. We had redressed in our wedding clothes for the party because why the hell not? It was awesome. My mom got control of what was left of the party, and we got to tell the town about our marriage. I met old school teachers, classmates, and even the former town mayor. We didn't need to pay for drinks for the rest of the night, and played darts and pool with everyone there. When we got back at 3 a.m., we cleaned everything up from the party, and started up the campfire again to cook breakfast. We got to hear about how cringy my mom was after we left, and how my husband's aunt told her off on her way to bed. That whole series of events led to me fully coming to the realization that my entitled mother would never change. She would always disrespect me. After 10 years of no contact soon after my wedding, we finally started talking again. This time I set the boundaries, and there isn't a damn thing she can do about it. Moral of the story? Do what you want for your special day. If someone doesn't like it, tough titties. Just because a person is family doesn't give them the right to treat you like crap. 4. My fiancé and I got engaged a few years ago. For context, we're both well educated and work in the business world, and are more than competent enough to plan complex events such as weddings. We didn't need a wedding planner for this reason, and I already had a list of vendors, venues, etc. that worked within our date and budget. Enter the mother-in-law. And she immediately wants to be involved with the planning. Okay, fine. She has been very nice to me and treats me like one of her own, which is actually part of the problem, and never had the wedding she wanted because her own mom was controlling. So I lost and gave up in some of the battles and allowed her to change the date from something important to us to a random one so her sister can come. Her sister wouldn't come on our original date because her son was having his birthday on that day. He's a grown man. I would have been more than happy to celebrate his birthday at our wedding, but it was a no-go. So fine. We changed the date and I spend my time re-coordinating with all our vendors. Then she starts making more demands. I must add his sister to my bridal party because it's tradition. We're friendly but not close. She doesn't usually show at events she says yes to, and my other bridesmaids are best friends I've known for a very long time, so it was uncomfortable. She didn't make it a question, and I was too shocked to respond at the time, like I was literally speechless. Then she complains about my dress. telling me I should get the first one I showed her, even though it was the wrong size and could not be altered. Plus, I liked the second one better. She hated that our reception was a short drive away. Her friends wanted it at the same location as the ceremony, even though we planned for a prepaid parking and taxis. She changed our original menu to something I didn't care for. I am to blame here since I didn't want to be a complainer. I fought for every one of my decisions and I was so tired. So let her do it since she did offer to pay. Because of COVID, she gave us an ultimatum to move our ceremony and reception to next year, or still do the full reception this year. We can't due to restrictions, but she didn't care. If it was an enjoyable wedding planning process where I got to save for my own wedding, I would have moved it for a better experience after COVID. But I dreaded it so much I literally broke down when my fiancé asked to push it out, since I couldn't imagine going another year of being treated like a baby with no capabilities or thoughts of my own. My fiancé did finally back me up and told his family we are already married. But I can't move the date out either since it's another lie I don't want to take part in. We have to lie about a lot of big decisions to his family. I get her other adult children, mid to late 30s, heavily depend on her financially and emotionally. But my parents raised me to be independent at a young age, and trust that they have raised me well to make good decisions. So I'm just overwhelmed. Ruined my wedding, but I'm planning our honeymoon, and that's the only thing I'm excited for since it will be for us. 5. I could be telling the story of my wedding day for all sorts of reasons. How we had to cut the guest list down from 200 to 10 in the very last week. How a swarm of bees took over my entryway and I had to call a beekeeper to safely relocate them. How my poor brother, who ended up having to be my maid of honor, usher, and DJ, dropped one of the pews we loaned from the church and it broke to smithereens. How we ended up having to spend our first night as a couple in a little camper in his parents' backyard instead of our fancy hotel. But instead I'm going to tell you about the best day of my life. Let's see if you can spot the one rotten spot in an otherwise glorious wedding day. I woke up at about 8 in the morning. I was happy to see it was sunny outside, because we had decided just that week to move the wedding up a day to avoid the forecasted rain. We could do that now that our guest list was only grandparents and immediate family. I ate breakfast, took a shower, and began to organize things for the ceremony setup. My best friend arrived, and she helped me run the supplies out to our backyard because I wasn't going to let my groom see me until the ceremony, and he wanted to help me set up all the decorations. He was excited to make the atmosphere just like we had imagined. We were having the ceremony just inside the woods near my parents' house. I had been preparing the area for months, and it was absolutely perfect, now that the bees were mostly gone. A slight breeze was blowing, so some of the floating candles we had set up were blowing out. That was the biggest hiccup in our day so far. I texted a few of my friends, "I can't believe I'm actually getting married today." I don't have the phone anymore, so I can't look back on the exact words of this conversation, but I will give you the gist of it. One of my friends, Gabe, responded, "I can't either." He included something like 3 crying faces, which I didn't think much about, because he was always dramatic. Then he called me. It rang a couple times. Then he hung up. A moment later he called again, and I answered. "Hey girl, could you meet me at the end of the driveway? It'll just be a minute." My groom was in the woods setting up, and I didn't have much to do for a few minutes, so I said, "Sure, I'll be right there." I figured one of two things. He wanted to give us a wedding gift, or 2, he just wanted to congratulate us on our day, since he couldn't come to the actual ceremony anymore. He knew better than to invite us both at the same time, because he knew we weren't supposed to see each other. I hopped in my car and drove to the end of the driveway. What we call the driveway is actually a half-mile-long gravel road. Gabe pulled up, got out of his car, and leaned up against it. I joined him. He didn't look at me much, just at the ground, so I put my hand on his back and said, "What's up?" As soon as he opened his mouth, I realized what was actually going on, and I took my hand off his back. He started to choke up. I'd known him since he was 7, and had never seen him cry, not even at his grandfather's funeral. He took his baseball cap off and started wringing it with his hands. I don't remember all he said, but he didn't beat around the bush. I believe what he said was, "I kind of had a nervous breakdown last night, and at first I wasn't going to say anything, but when you texted me, I just knew I had to come talk to you." because ever since I was little, I've always imagined you were the one I was going to marry. I never felt that way about anyone else. I know I've done a lot of stupid stuff because I was young and scared, but I really love you. I will always love you no matter what. I have a good job now working construction with my dad, and I can support you. We could leave right now and have a life together. I know you love your fiancé, but I just can't imagine being with anyone else but you. I'm sorry I waited till your wedding day, but I just had to say something or I would die. It was the strangest thing. I should have been shocked. Before I started dating the man I was about to marry, Gabe and I had discussed starting a relationship many times, but he just never took that next step. No matter how clear I made it that I was open to the idea, he acted in a way that most would consider flirtatious. But he treated all other girls the same way, so I decided that was just his personality. I had just decided to be his friend, and we had become very close at one point. I was one of the first people he came out to. He had told me he wasn't attracted to women, only men. But that was when he was 16. I suppose he'd come to terms with a side of himself he wasn't sure about before. I don't know. Was I confused? Yes, but somehow not shocked. I should have been angry. He just proposed to me on my wedding day. He wanted to ruin a healthy relationship, devastate a perfectly respectable young man that should have been his friend. He just asked me to come out to the end of a dirt road while I could be getting into my white dress, just to finally admit he had a crush on me. After all the months of confusion I had endured back then, I had every right to smack him. Instead, I was at total peace. I knew exactly what I wanted to say, which is super rare for me. I just said, "No, Gabe. I know I'm doing the right thing today. There's not a single part of me that doubts that. I did used to love you, but it clearly wasn't meant to be. I admire you for having the honesty. I respect that." He accepted it well. I'm sure he knew it was coming. And that was it. I did not hug him goodbye and say "love you" like I always did. I just walked back to my car and drove away. I immediately texted my fiancé, "So, Gabe just tried to propose to me. Just thought I would let you know." He said, "Thanks for letting me know." He didn't let it bother him. Once I got home and told my best friend and mom, we freaked out together a little bit like, "I can't believe this happened to you. Why did he wait so long?" And then laughed it off. We didn't talk or think about it for the rest of the day. The wedding was so beautiful. It couldn't have been better. We weren't stressed, no one passed out or got stung by bees or got rained on. After our grandparents left, we invited our original bridal party back over in their gowns and suits to have an outdoor banquet. We snacked on fresh fruit platters and shrimp cocktails, and did some impromptu dancing to the light of tiki torches until it was too dark to see. Around 8 p.m., my groom and I drove off into the sunset to our very first night together. Sure, it was only 5 miles away in a stink-bug-infested camper, but we got our Nashville honeymoon in a gorgeous Airbnb a few days later, and a month later I discovered my son's existence. Our first year together has been such an adventure, and I wouldn't change it for the world. At first, my husband was very upset at Gabe and didn't want to be around him, but as the months went on, we ran into him a few times, and the awkwardness slowly wore off. We let him hold our son, and he sang him to sleep, and we just felt like all was well. There was no grudge to hold. Last time we saw him, we didn't mind giving him a side hug and saying "love you" as we left his sister's house. Perhaps I could add spice to the story by saying that I struggled with my choice, wondered how different things would be if I had chosen to run away with Gabe. But that just wouldn't be truthful. There wasn't any artificial drama about the whole thing. I have no regrets. I must say that when I see him, my stomach churns a little bit, cringing inside that I was ever attracted to such an imbalanced, immature person. But even those thoughts have faded with time. If anything happens, I hope this story gives you hope that good things are possible in the midst of pandemic chaos, and that even if you're used to cutting people that hurt you out of your life, forgiveness is possible if you let it happen, and don't keep picking at the wound. even if someone attempts to sabotage the best day of your life. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Stresses and Dresses, Wedding Hijinks number 3. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you yourself have a story you'd like to send in, be it for a wedding story or any of the other types of videos I do, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. Also, I ask a lot of you, don't I? If you liked the video, then please do boop the like button, and if you are so inclined, subscribe. That way you'll get my videos in your inbox. You can also ding that bell to be notified when I upload, which is every day. Okay, my head is very tingly right now because I should be sleeping, and I have already recorded the stories in today's video and yesterday's video once already. I was having some audio troubles today. Eventually it turned out it's just basically my headphones, which I basically give a little bit of... my headphones, which I recently fixed up, replaced the cable because the cable was broken, new ear pads, and they're working great now, and so great I could actually hear. Now, it's probably not noticeable. The audio sounds okay, right? But it's enough to me that I can hear an echo. It sounds maybe a little hollow, at least to my ears it does. I'm very picky about things like that. And I thought, well, what can it be? Because everything else sounds fine coming through these headphones. It's just when I'm recording stuff. And I actually thought, well, maybe it's something to do with the program, because it sounded a bit better in other programs. Ultimately, it was the mic position, and the fact that I need to put some soundproofing on this room. So, when I was done messing about with the program, all my settings were messed up, and it took a while to get them fixed, so I spent about 4 hours, I think, fixing them before I could record, and unfortunately, I assumed it would just export properly, because it was recording the audio okay, but no, there was some stupid little thing that had to be checked and saved before it would actually save the file, so it was basically saving empty files. So I had to record everything all over again, which was delightful. I had a wonderful time. Anyway, I'm going to get these videos made, then I'm going to have a rest. Okay. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.